right, Texan wants to know if this year's Red Raider basketball team could be more explosive offensively than the Elite 8 team from last year. How about defensively? You know, I'm not seeing it right now. For me, I'm going to go and jump in there just because, look, yeah, All-American in Keenan Evans. I think that's the obvious. But also Zaire Smith is one of the most efficient basketball players I've ever seen at any level. And the guy didn't turn the ball over. He was great on the offensive boards. He was an elite finisher. He also shot very well and didn't turn the ball over. So and he was actually a better facilitator than I think most people give him credit for. So, you know, I would say, look, this team has a chance to be very explosive, very good. I think it's a tournament team, no doubt, top half of the Big 12. But do I think it'll be explosive offensively? Is the Elite 8 the best team in program history? Probably not.
Yeah, I think that just remains to be seen. I mean, we saw a huge offensive outburst last night in the second half against a really good USC team. But we're going to need to see that kind of on a regular basis a little bit before we can make any sort of, you know, pronouncements or anything like that.
I saw both sides of it, right? Like the great and the ugly, you know?
Sure, exactly. But I mean, there's hope based upon what we saw last night. I mean, with those three guards going off, you know, Culver, Mooney, and Morrow. Morrow, hey, listen, I'm going to blow my own horn here a little bit. All right, I said this guy is going to have a breakout season, and he, you know, it's early. He could still regress. He could fade out. But the early indications are good. And we knew the guy had a shooting stroke.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that was not an issue. But he's showing the ability to have a nice little mid-range game as well.
Create his own shot.
Sure, he can manufacture his own shot. Yeah. That's something that every team must have if they're going to make it in the NCAA tournament and do anything. And, you know, he's got this little teardrop. He goes behind the back well, creates space. And if he gets that going, then, man, he becomes a really, really tough guy. And he's already a really crafty sort of a defender, you know, just sneaky, gets his hand on a lot of balls and stuff. Skills, yeah. He does, and Mooney does too. But look, if you get those three guards hitting on a regular basis, then suddenly you do have a pretty potent offensive team.
Yeah.
Could it be as good as last year? I don't know. But if that happens, then they can be comparable, at least.
Smushhand 1 wants to know, why is Tech favored by 7 versus Baylor? Is Bowman going to play? What injury, if any, did Duffy have versus Kansas State? It's a lot. Okay, let's go. Let's start with the first one. Why do you believe Tech is favored by 7 against Baylor? That's a good question.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I mean,
they were favored by what, 6 last week?
Tech was favored by 6 last week. You know, it's a very good question. I don't know. I mean,
they have identical records.
Yeah, they have identical records. Obviously, I mean, Baylor looked bad against TCU, but Tech looked worse against Kansas State. I mean, it's on the surface, you cannot really say that one team is demonstrably better than the other. I mean, they're both pretty bad. Yeah. You know, I think maybe Tech has more overall talent than Baylor. You know, maybe that's what they're looking at. But then you got to factor in Tech's terrible situation at quarterback. You don't even know who's going to be available. And it may not even be a guy who's on scholarship who's out there playing a lot. So it's a little bit of a puzzle, you know. I mean, sometimes Vegas knows something that we don't know. You know, I mean, those guys are making a lot of money, putting those spreads out for a reason. They know what they're doing, but they're wrong sometimes too. They were wrong on Texas Tech last time. They could be wrong again. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I think where I'm confused is you look at the injury situation. Dakota's down. Offensive line, there's significant injuries and just problems. And then obviously quarterback, yeah, I mean, like we said earlier, we don't think Allen or Jet's going to play this week, so that leaves McLean Carter, who didn't exactly. Now, he just got thrown out there, was cold, literally and figuratively, but, you know, he didn't look good. You know what I mean? And it's hard just to kind of turn it on for the season finale after not playing all year. But they asked him to do it last year against Texas. So they may ask him. They more than likely are going to ask him to do it again this week against Baylor. So we'll have to see there. But man, that seems like a really high spread to me. Yeah. Maybe we're too close to the 5 to see it objectively. I don't know. But all right, we just mentioned about Baylor. We just mentioned about Bowman. Is he going to play? No, we don't believe so. Don't know that for certain, but don't believe so. And then the other question is, what injury, if any, did Duffy have against Kansas State? Well, he actually. And Kingsbury's already confirmed this, but he had a pre-existing injury that went back to the UT game. It was a knee injury. Bottom line is he also tweaked his foot. He's been in a boot this week. Heard from more than 2 sources, honestly, about that he showed up on Sunday, I believe, with a boot and crutches, and I mean, people have seen him around campus, so that's the situation with him. I don't think Duffy's going to play either. So pretty tough situation for the Red Raiders. The Red Raider 07 wants to know, should Kirby Hocutt be on the hot seat if he decides to retain Kingsbury and the football team goes 5-7 or worse next year?
Well, I mean, forget about next year. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if Hocutt does not make some sort of a move, regardless of what happens against Baylor, then in my opinion, there should be some sort of a rebellion against Kirby Hocutt.
Wow.
And I don't care if that's internally or externally or both, but somebody somewhere down the line needs to put heat on him to either do the right thing or step aside and let somebody else do it. And then if he doesn't like that at the end of the day, then there are other greener pastures for him as well. I mean, I think it's that serious. I think it's that ridiculous for a program with this sort of potential and these facilities and everything going behind it to be settling for this sort of stuff. Yeah, this is sort of consistent mediocrity year after year.
Not mediocre. It's not even mediocre.
Yeah, really, if you take out all of these non-conference wins against nobody, and you start looking at the Big 12 record and the home record, yeah, it is worse than mediocre. It's indefensible, and he's the guy who's in charge of making these decisions, and if he doesn't want to do it, then somebody else needs to.
Yeah, my deal this year is, I think if they, and it shouldn't come down to this, but I think it did last year, where they won in Austin, and so he came back. And I think if he hadn't, I don't think he would have, more than likely. I don't know that for sure, but I don't know how you sell 5-7, your 3rd straight losing season, 4th losing season in 5 years. I mean, you haven't had this kind of futility since, what, the Jerry Moore years, the middle 80s, over 3 decades ago. So, I mean, I don't know what you expect to be different. You can make excuses. We just talked about the quarterback situation for sure. There's always been something. The defense isn't ready, the kicker, but bottom line is it's Power 5 football, big boy football. At some point, you got to call it what it is and go a different direction. Everybody likes Kingsbury. Everybody wanted it to work out, but it hasn't. So 6-6, they beat Baylor, they go to a bowl. I could see them selling that. I don't know if people are going to accept it or not, but 5-7 is just, you end the season with a 5-game losing streak. I don't know how they do it. If they do it, it'd be amazing. I'm just kind of intellectually curious to how they would actually go about doing that, honestly, so just to kind of see that play out. But I don't know. I hate that it's been kind of miserable for you Red Raider fans, and then for us too to cover this. But hopefully, no matter which way they go, as you mentioned, greener pastures ahead. So, but Mighty Joe, great stuff from you as always. Great questions from y'all. Until next time.